Good morning, Digit fam. Adam Dowd here with another edition of all the tech news going down in town, Charlie Brown. This morning I cranked up the bucket on the clever introduction well, and what do you know? It was empty. It is April 10th, 2019, and this is your Digit Daily. What if I told you a Chinese phone manufacturer, who is one of the biggest manufacturers in the world, was releasing a phone with a periscope camera that was capable of 10x zoom? You'd say, but Adam, you already told us about the Huawei P30 Pro. Are you off your meds again? To which I'd reply, no, I'm never on meds, and maybe that's more scary. Oh, and I'm not talking about Huawei, I'm talking about Oppo. What? That's right, Oppo is the world's 5th largest phone manufacturer, and today Oppo announced a pair of new phones called the Reno, and the more flagship of the two carries a periscope camera with similar zoom technology as the Huawei P30 Pro. You might remember we talked about Oppo when discussing the P30 Pro long enough to mention that Oppo showed off similar periscope tech. Well, now it has shown that tech to the rest of the world. The Oppo Reno and the Oppo Reno 10X Zoom Edition are here, and yes, that is the actual name, and no, I'm not happy about that either. We really need to get a handle on naming things. It's still on the to-do list. Anyway, you might also remember the Reno because we talked about its shark fin pop-up selfie module, which is not necessarily neat, but still kind of slick looking. I'm a fan. Both phones have the Sony IMX586 48 megapixel main camera sensor that we've heard so much about from the past few months. Sony is cleaning up with that sensor, even if it won't use it on its own phones. But anyway, that's a different conversation. The flagship phone has a 6.6-inch OLED screen, Snapdragon 855 chipset, 4065 mAh battery, and can shoot 4K video at 60 frames per second. The standard model comes with a less ridiculous name, carries a Snapdragon 710, a smaller battery, and a headphone jack, and why is this becoming a thing? Let's put the headphone jack on the lower model just to screw with people! Damn you, Oppo and Huawei. Damn you to hell. Both phones give you in-display fingerprint sensors, which probably suck, VOOC 3.0 charging, which is crazy fast if the Oppo R17 Pro is any indicator, and NFC. The Zoom Edition starts at 4,000 yuan, or about $600, and the Standard Edition starts at 3,000 yuan, or about $450, and that's crazy cheap for what these phones bring. Probably. See, on paper, Oppo phones look like they could beat the Huawei P30 at its own game, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that the camera comparisons won't even be close. The 48 megapixel sensor in the Oppo sounds really impressive, but the camera samples coming from the same sensor in other phones have been, pretty good so far, but not spectacular. And remember, Huawei is using the RYYB camera filter that we talked about, giving the P30 Pro stunning low-light capability. Plus, despite both phones using similar periscope technology, I get the sense that Huawei's implementation will be more refined and that the hybrid zoom will likely be just a little bit better. Of course, we won't know until we see a global release and full reviews, which will likely come later this month or maybe in the beginning of May. I'll be paying close attention, so I promise you this won't be the last time you hear about this phone from me. But it will be the last time you hear about this phone from me today, because it is time for the Roundup! Before we get started, it's worth noting that after the newsletter came out, but before the podcast came out, we all got to see what a black hole looks like. It's neat, and there's a great video explaining a lot of it. We'll cover it more in detail tomorrow. For now, let's talk about LG. Android Authority's LG G8 review is out in written, video, and podcast form. Overall, this is a gorgeous phone that is very well built, but it seems like LG is playing it safe still with a modest design. There are a couple of neat but half-baked features in there, like air control that allow you to control the phone without touching it, Minority Report, gimmick, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. Last month, we saw Google quietly reassigning much of its hardware division to other departments, specifically those people working on laptops and tablets. Well, according to Google, there are more laptops and Chromebooks on the horizon, and there's probably some logic here that we're missing. Or it's possible that Google's left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. Either way, it'll be fun to watch. AT&T flipped the switch on a couple of new 5G markets in Los Angeles and San Francisco today, bringing the total number of markets to 19, which is great. What's not great is that AT&T still isn't selling any 5G phones. The only way a consumer can access this network is by using a 5G hotspot that AT&T sells and by going to the few blocks in each city where it actually works. Whoop-de-doo. I mean, I guess it's better than that 5G evolution BS that AT&T's been pushing and getting sued for, so we'll give them credit at least for that. And speaking of Me Too, you'll remember the other day we spoke about Amazon's goal to launch satellites that provide internet from low orbit, and I mentioned at the time that an Elon Musk company was already working to do just that. Well, and yes, I'm taking full credit for this, Elon is apparently a listener of this show because yesterday he tweeted at Jeff Bezos calling him a copycat. Now consider this, 2 billionaires might get into a public catfight on Twitter over this, and we get to watch. The future is grand. My wife doesn't listen to this podcast, which is why I'm allowed to say that some airplane maintenance personnel are even worse at updating technology than she is. Specifically, I'm referring to a bug in GPS systems that caused a sort of Y2K thing to happen over the weekend that reset clocks back to August of 1999. Some aircraft who hadn't installed firmware updates to their GPS got grounded because All Star by Smash Mouth is not currently in the top 10, and holy crap, All Star by Smash Mouth was 20 years ago. Jesus, I'm old. And finally, some dude on Reddit spent the last year talking to himself on the platform because admins accidentally shadow banned his IP address. Since then, he hasn't gotten an upvote, a downvote, or any comments on any of his comments or posts, and he was beginning to wonder if he was just the world's most boring human. And as someone who admittedly hangs his hat on engagement, I can relate, except I wasn't shadow banned, and now I feel really bad about myself. So that's going to do it for today's Digit Daily. If you'd like to learn more about any of these stories, check out the links in the show notes and subscribe to our daily newsletter on Digit.com. And if you like what you heard, subscribe, leave a review, and be sure to tell your friends about DigitDailyPod.com. Once again, I'm Adam Dowd, Dead Technology on Twitter, and we'll talk again tomorrow.